We are discussing this topic, cultivating inner mastery, the path to personal leadership, or the pathway to exploring this thing we call personal leadership. I am always delighted when I am to talk about personal leadership. And I know that personal leadership and self mastery have a lot in common, or in fact, one produces the other, one creates the other, just like the paradox of the hen and the egg, or the egg and the chick, rather. We are expected to produce something out of our lives through self mastery. And when we do that repeatedly, when people look at us, they have high chances of believing that this guy is leading himself. This guy is on the driver's seat and he is doing this thing by himself. This is conscious, this is not an accident, this is not something that he just stumbled on. So, at the intellectual level, scientists and philosophers have been thinking, what exactly is it? Is it the egg that produces the hen, or it is the hen that produces the egg? In essence, who is the father of who? That is that paradox that has endured for long. So today we are going to see how self mastery shapes personal leadership and how personal leadership in turn strengthens your own self mastery. And of course, if you have mastered yourself, we are expecting you to become a better version of yourself because you will choose things that are better for yourself than that have high chances of turning you to a successful person in the future than anybody else, right? So still, it all boils down to one of my favorite topics, leadership. But I always tell people that I am skeptical now when they tell me to teach leadership. Because while I have defended this for long, I am beginning to get concerned when the same people are always appearing in leadership conferences. For example, if you work in an organization and they tell you that leadership is not about position, if you want to be a leader, and there is something that needs to be adjusted, just take the initiative and do it. How many people really do it? Many people don't really find the courage to pick up and say, even though I am not the CEO, this thing needs to change and I'm going to do it without permission. How many people do it? Of course, the work environment may be toxic, but that's exactly why leaders exist. Leaders do it even when it's not comfortable, even when it's not convenient, right? So let's talk about this leadership thing. I always love John Maxwell's definition of leadership because it's the simplest, it's the easiest that I have ever seen. He said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And while I love it so much. I love it so much. In fact, when I hear young people or people who are just starting their journey in leadership try to bring lots of corrections to this leadership definition, I laugh. Because, in leadership and in other topics that are much more philosophic in nature, we try to just say anything we feel like saying. But in science, it's not like this. In science, you don't just say anything you like, right? 1 plus 1 is 2, and we have to build on this. And that's why we have been able to create rockets from normal magnets, right? From knowing the principle of like poles repel, unlike poles attract. People do not come up in the future and begin to say, no, 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 in fact, this is not it. No, people have to accept it and then they move on. So we have to build on the things that we have already known, not to try to bring them down. Because if they have not been working, people would not have been building on them for 50 years, right? Now, I know that there are some theories that we need to rethink. But believe me, when it comes to this thing called leadership, it rides on influence. Then another definition of leadership that really gets to me is that of Miles Monroe, Dr. Miles Monroe. He said leadership is the capacity to influence. Still, he also started with influence, but he says we do it through inspiration, right? So according to Miles, the premise where influence begins is inspiration. And Miles was so convinced that people really get inspired when you portray a life that has the capacity to inspire them. The word inspire is still from in the medical time to breathe in, when they say inspire, you breathe in and you breathe out, right? So the whole concept is that when you are living with a leader who inspires you, it tends to give you the opposite of the effect of this thing called he does not suffocate you. A leader who inspires tends not to suffocate, right? So he gives you this oxygen all over you, right? So, but we don't just inspire people without being passionate. So Miles says if you see anybody inspiring or being inspired, it is because that person is passionate about what they are doing. Okay, so but nobody just gets passionate just like that without the person having a sense of vision. The person must definitely have vision for their lives. It's only vision that keeps people in one place, kicking and standing. But vision itself comes from conviction, and conviction comes from a deep sense of purpose. So I am just summarizing I am just summarizing Dr. Miles' definition of leadership. So since we are starting on the premise that leadership is influence, and we are now hitting on personal leadership itself, what exactly then, or how can we influence ourselves so that we can lead ourselves? This is the entire premise upon which this conversation is going to stay, right? How can we influence ourselves to master ourselves by ourselves so that we can begin to engage in behaviors that at the end of the day increases our chances of becoming better, growing, exploring all our potentials and all the gifts that are within us, so that by the time we are old, we look back, we say, oh, I've done everything that I am supposed to do, right? This is the premise upon which we are going to continue this conversation. So I was saying earlier that anytime you tell me to teach about leadership, the first thing I try to do is I try to provoke leadership. I'm more interested in provoking leadership out of people because teaching leadership hasn't been effective for everyone. I rather put you in a state where I provoke you and you just stand up and go ahead and begin to think like a leader. Because the most difficult thing it comes when it comes to leadership is that leaders are not just supposed to behave in one way and then that's all. No, leaders are supposed to think in one way, in a certain way, right? So leaders have what we know as the mindset of leadership, or what we call as the attitude of leadership, or what Miles Monroe says calls it as the spirit of leadership. You see how difficult it is to teach leadership because attitude is much more difficult to engage in people. It's always like that. So if you really want somebody to swim in a large ocean and the person doesn't, the first thing to do is just to push them inside. So they choose whether to die or to swim inside that ocean. You get? So that stage of you pushing them inside this ocean is what I call provoking leadership. So I always advise people listening to me anywhere to allow themselves to do the things that make them to feel like they're in a large body of water and all they have to do is swim or they die. This is just what leadership is all about. That is the only thing that will change your mindset. You know the story or this analogy of why the lion is the king of the jungle? It's simple. The lion just has a mindset. His mind is set in one thing. A lion never wakes up in the morning and the first thing he begins to think of is probably the hyenas will eat me today. How can I do to survive? No. The lion wakes up in the morning and the first thing he thinks about is what am I having today for a meal? So if any animal crosses the lion's path, or whatever, no matter how big the animal is, the lion just thinks, is this my meal today? And he just acts according to the way he thinks. Just nothing is hindering him. He just acts according to the way he thinks. I want to eat. Everyone else here is my food. That's just how the lions think, right? So this attitude is the most difficult thing ever to put in anyone, to cultivate in anyone, and that is why people are hungry of leadership. Everywhere we keep spending money to train leaders, and it's not happening. The simple reason is because leadership is never supposed to be something you teach. It's supposed to be an attitude that somebody grabs. Okay? So, since we have said this and we are convinced about these two important things about leadership, number one, you can influence yourself by yourself. Number two, it has to be an attitude thing, right? Number three, then how do we do this thing called self mastery? Self mastery is a work of depth. Is a work of depth. You need to go deep to master yourself. Deep. Deeper than anybody has ever told you. Like you need to go deep. Now, I mentioned the attitude of leadership earlier because it takes crazy attitude. It takes the attitude of a leader to really, really agree to go deep. Because when you go deep, you don't always see what you want to see. Now, how do you react when you go deep and you begin to encounter the scars, the failures of the past, the inadequacies? Maybe you were abused in the past, a lot of things that you don't even want to see. It takes the attitude of leadership to stand your ground and say, it doesn't matter. I am going to stay until I figure out myself. I am going to stay until I figure out what exactly is wrong. And I'm going to stay until I prove myself that I can succeed. You see, it takes one kind of attitude to follow the steps that are needed for self mastery. Believe me, it takes this attitude of leadership, this attitude that makes you think and makes you believe that, see, it doesn't matter what I find. Just like this lion we talked about. What I want is I want to master myself. And to master myself, I'm going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm ready to confront it now. I am ready to confront it. So, this attitude we're talking about, what are the steps that you're going to need if you want to really, really master this attitude? What are these steps? One of the most important steps you need to take is this thing called self reflection. Now, many people have heard the word self reflection. You looking at the mirror by yourself and understanding that this is me. You remember Michael Jackson's song, I'm talking to the man in the mirror, right? This is the same thing we're talking about. We're saying, call yourself to order and look at yourself in the mirror and say, so this is who I really am. In fact, self reflection is so tough that sometimes you need to involve others to help you. It's so tough, it's so difficult because you need to stay and say, this is me looking at myself, cutting out all the troubles, all the favoritism that you know, I will naturally stand on my own side. But this time around, I just want to see the picture. I want to see the picture. Okay. So this one thing self-reflection does is that it gives you data, it gives you information. You just see it. Oh, this is me. This is my nose. This is my mouth. You see everything about yourself. And these informations, the ones you like and the ones you totally don't want to see. Then you carefully sit down and say, okay, now I am aware. I am aware. And this is what we call self awareness, right? I am aware. Okay. So you are aware that this is now who you are, or this is how you behave in this kind of environment. This is how you behave in this kind of situation. This is how you are more likely to respond if someone should talk to you in this manner, right? You become self-aware, and then in self-awareness you can begin to document, okay, these are my strengths. I remember someone just said something about me and I was supposed to react violently, but I kept quiet. And wow, you say, oh wow, I have very good emotional intelligence. Oh, I had somebody said this and this and this, and I was sure the person said it, but when I met him, I was calm, I was relaxed. We exchanged business cards and we were fine. And I even went ahead and did business with him. We signed a deal and we are working on a project right now. I don't care. You see, you are aware, okay, these are my strengths. I can ignore things that does not matter. I can stand on the truth. I can do this even if it hurts. I can take the necessary actions, right? And then you come again and say, okay, what are my weaknesses? From what I have gathered, I can be lazy, slothful, okay? I can be too aggressive. I can be too demanding. I can be uncultured. I can be nagging, narcissist. All these things, you come and say, okay, these are my weaknesses. And if I don't work on them, I'll have trouble. And then these are my opportunities, because anytime I explore my strengths, it gives me opportunities. And every time I explore my weaknesses, it puts me under threats, right? So while you do that, the next thing you go is self introspection. You want to see, you want to inspect again. You want to see, because these are the data available for you. And then you're introspecting, you're checking what exactly is happening. How can I do this? How can I ensure that this does not put me down? Now, when it comes to self mastery, I told you earlier that self mastery is a work of depth. You want to go deeper than everyone else when it comes to anything that has to do with you, your potential, your gift, your talent. You want to go deeper as you can, right? So if you want to go deep, here is an advice. Forget your weaknesses. You're already weak in your weaknesses. Leave them alone, for God's sake. You're already weak in your weaknesses. I emphasize this always to people who I'm teaching. You want to master yourself. You work on your strength, because it has been proven over and over again that if you work on your strength has the capacity to make your weaknesses disappear with time. You understand? If, for example, you can sing and on a scale your vocals are 0 to from a scale of 0 to 10, let's say you are 6, and you know that if you work very well you can go to a 9, and you know people can reward somebody at 9. A person that is at 9 can have a manager. A person who is at 9 can have somebody working for him. A person who is at 9 can have most of the weaknesses that you see disappear naturally. and you want to master that particular art of singing, are you going to master it, or you will rather say, I I lack courage, and maybe I should work on my courage? If the gift of courage and strength is not your natural disposition, you probably will be working on it, but maybe you are just on a 2 in a scale of 1 to 10. So maybe when you work on it very well, you become a 5. And in a 5, nobody claps for you, nobody stands for you, nobody gives you any clapping ovation. So why do you waste your time on your weaknesses? Work on your strength, rather. That is it when it comes to mastery. Why do you want to master what you are weak at? It doesn't make any sense, right? Good. So you work on your strength. You work on those things that you see. Wow, I have emotional intelligence. Now let me work on them. How can I ensure that this works well for me in my organization? How can I explore this thing? I can sing, I can dance, I am beautiful. How can I work on these things? You work on your strength. Always, always, always work on your strength, because you don't have the time to work on your strength and your weaknesses. Work on your strength first, always, always. Okay. So when you do this, you are on a path that will take you to mastery of yourself. Okay. And then you can begin to lead yourself. Now, let me just go over this very well. One of the things you have to check when you do self mastery or self leadership is to understand that you are going to be saying no more than you are saying yes. Because when you go through all those data, we go through self reflection, through self mastery, through self introspection, and all of those things, you begin to see that, well, you are different from everyone else you've known. You confirm it with your thumbprint, you confirm it with the sound of your voice, you confirm it with, even if you're a twin, you can begin to see things that are totally different from your twin. You will begin to say, oh, that means if everyone is doing something, I probably shouldn't be doing it. If everyone is reading this particular book, I shouldn't be doing it. If everyone is watching this series, probably that will not be the best for me. Your mind will begin to move towards, how can I do the things that make me master myself, even if they are boring? And your first response in life will begin to be no. Hey, come on, let's go. No, this is not for me. Hey, come on, let's have this. You say no, not now. Right? You begin to have delayed gratification. When they say let's do, no, it's always not me. This is not me. This is not now, please. Not now. Oh, um, not here. Not right now. You begin to see that the greatest things you do for self-leadership is you halt yourself. You remove yourself. You're less engaging because you're different, right? If you do this, you will begin to see that, oh, wow, you are growing, you're understanding yourself better. Because right now you are having the courage to say no. And you're understanding there's nothing wrong with saying no any day, anytime. And then you'll be comfortable with saying no, right? And you are in step 1. Step 2 is some of these things you've discovered, you need to manage them. Okay, how can I manage myself? How can I manage my emotions? How can I, that's what we call emotional intelligence, right? How can I maximize the opportunities that are coming my way? How can I position myself in the world in such a way that I will win? How can I ensure that what I'm passionate about is what the world is passionate about, so that I can be rewarded, right? If you are interested in SDG 4, for example, education, and you do not know that, well, this your passion is not just you. there are a lot of people in the world who are passionate about it and they are rewarding it. You will have a clue on how to structure it, refine it, and sell yourself than if you totally don't know, right? Good. So, to take the recap, self mastery is a path to self leadership, and self leadership can also influence you to master yourself better. And if you master yourself, just like Plato said, man, know thyself. If you know that yourself, you have higher chances of refining yourself from a crude form to a form that everyone will be willing to pay for. And then you become a commodity that nobody can ignore. You become valuable. And then you begin to produce things of value. Okay? And then everything about you will matter. Everything about you will make sense. Okay? So this is it. Thank you so much. Please go ahead, subscribe, and drop a comment, and then tell me what you think about this, okay? Or what you want me to make a video on. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Remember, self mastery is the key.